Mac was released from prison today on his birthday via Lupe.
Yo, his birthday, his freedom day. The 55th Street General finally touched down. Mac had been released earlier, but before he could even breathe that free air, the county slapped those cold bracelets right back on his wrists. The cuffs were just the warm-up. What happened next had the internet completely stunned. The day the general walked, January 30th, 2026, stamped that date in the books of internet rap history. Because what went down that day was the kind of bait-and-switch plot Hollywood writers would kill to script. And even then, audiences would call it fake because it's too grimy to believe. Trevor Hurd, the man the internet knows as Crip Mac, the unfiltered, face-tatted 55th Street figure who built a cult following off raw gang stories, chaotic jail tales, and brutally honest internet energy, was finally supposed to be free. The type of street talk most folks, too shook to even whisper, turned into a whole internet wave. He was supposed to walk out those federal doors a free man, the universe lining it up, so his freedom landed on the exact same day his mama brought him into this world. That hit people in a real way. And if you followed the Crip Mac saga, you know moments like that feel bigger than just one person. It felt symbolic, like a reset, like the story was finally turning a new page. Confirmations spread like wildfire across every platform that matters. Words started circulating through people close to his circle. Then media pages picked it up. Clips started rolling. Screenshots flying. The timeline lit up. Even outlets like No Jumper pushed the news out to millions. Instagram Reels started flooding feeds with old clips, throwback interviews, jail calls, reaction videos. The algorithm was doing what it does best, turning one moment into a global spectacle. And the energy? Electric. Not just hype, relief. That rare collective exhale that happens when someone the internet has watched suffer, spiral, crash out, and survive somehow makes it to the other side. Because whether people rocked with him, laughed at him, studied him, or just hate-watched the chaos, folks were tapped in.
Crip Mac was released from prison today on his birthday via Lupe.
But before we get to the gut punch, and trust me, it's coming like a freight train around a blind corner, you need to understand what landed this man in a federal cage in the first place. The depth of his legal mess is what made everything that followed feel so painfully predictable. Hurd was serving a 33-month federal sentence, 2 years and 9 months, for possessing ammunition as a convicted felon. That charge stemmed from a September 2023 arrest where law enforcement found a ghost gun on him, an untraceable firearm with no serial number, loaded with live rounds, carried by a man who already had a felony record. That's the kind of discovery that makes prosecutors light up and defense attorneys reach for the aspirin. As Billboard reported, U.S. Marshals made the arrest the second state charges were dropped, pulling off a cinematic jurisdiction handoff that caught everyone off guard. The ghost gun's firing pin was faulty. The weapon couldn't actually fire, so the feds were only able to hit him with ammunition possession, sidestepping a possible life sentence under RICO provisions that could have tied him to organized gang activity, potentially even murders. He pleaded guilty in April 2024 and was sentenced that August. Now widen the lens, because Hurd didn't just appear in federal court out of nowhere. His criminal record reads like a timeline of a life spent in the trenches of South Central LA. Felony arrests going back to 2014, attempted second-degree armed robbery, grand theft, transporting controlled substances. These weren't random slip-ups by an otherwise steady individual. They were the predictable results of an environment where 55th Street affiliation shaped daily survival, where loyalty to the set was both a lifeline and a noose, where the economic paths open to a young black man in that zip code were so limited that the illegal ones didn't even feel like choices. They felt like the only doors that weren't locked. By 2021, he had already cycled through probation violations, served time, lost a tooth in a brutal jail fight, and navigated the suffocating politics of incarceration, where Crips had to align against rival factions or risk total isolation. A GoFundMe campaign organized by Andrew Callahan of Channel 5 for Hurd's legal defense even mentioned a schizophrenia diagnosis, adding clinical weight to what casual viewers had already picked up on. The manic energy, the sudden mood swings, the flashes of real vulnerability breaking through the bravado like daylight cutting across a prison cell window.
Oh, he looking good.
That reaction, seeing Hurd after release and being shocked he looked healthy, looked whole, looked like a man not completely broken by the system, says a lot about the unspoken expectation people carry about prison. The assumption is destruction. The surprise is survival. And for one brief, beautiful moment on January 30th, it actually felt like the survival story might get a happy ending. The general is home. 55th Street celebrates. And then the system did what it always does. The second Hurd stepped out of federal custody, he was immediately grabbed by LA County deputies on a state probation violation tied to that same 2023 gun case. Not the next day, Not a week later, after he could eat a real meal, hug his grandmother, or take a breath that didn't taste like institutional air. Instantly, a hold, a transfer to county jail, potentially up to 90 more days behind bars. No jumper broke down the full Rearist story, and the internet, which had been celebrating just hours earlier, exploded. X timelines filled with confusion, anger, conspiracy theories. Some called it a setup, claiming rivals tipped off authorities. Others blamed the system itself, arguing that a heavily documented figure with face tattoos and a massive platform was never going to be allowed to walk without further extraction. And then there were the darker whispers, people suggesting the Rearist was a cover for something more sinister, that the smoke might not have been metaphorical.
You still
His
think,
probation says he can't drink?
You think he gonna be just getting drunk?
That question, casual as it sounds, is a scalpel cutting straight to the core of what post-release life actually looks like for someone in Heard's position. The probation terms: no drinking, no associating with known gang members, no entering certain areas, no doing the very things that make up the only life you've ever known, aren't built for success. They're built for measurement. They're structured so that when you slip, and the system quietly expects you to, there's a neat paper trail recording your noncompliance. The drinking question isn't really about alcohol. It's about whether a man who's spent his entire adult life bouncing between cells and streets can suddenly perform the kind of monastic discipline probation demands from someone who has never given the tools, the support, or the environment to practice discipline in the first place.
I got violated like 2-3 times hanging on the 4X's.
That right there is the confession that mirrors the Crip situation with surgical, devastating precision, violated for associating with gang members. Think about what that means on the ground. You grow up in a neighborhood where everyone you know, childhood friends, cousins, the people who had your back when no one else did, is affiliated. The system says freedom. The conditions say isolation. You can't live in both worlds. And the system knows it, which is why recidivism rates look the way they do, which is why the revolving door of incarceration keeps spinning. And that's why a man like Trevor Heard, with 55th Street tattooed on his body and embedded in his identity, is perpetually one conversation, one handshake, one Instagram live away from being back in a cell. That is not rehabilitation. That is a trap with a timer. Now let's break down the title straight up, because this is where the whole story splits open into something far uglier than a probation hold, and far more revealing than any court document. Crip instantly went viral after prison release. That post detonated across every timeline, every group chat, every comment section where hip-hop and the streets collide, and in the rap media ecosystem, where death hoaxes spread as reliably as weather reports, where bodies fall consistently enough that any headline claiming another casualty hits with immediate shock. Instant knee-jerk believability. The claim didn't need a single shred of proof to spread. No source, no confirmation. All it needed was a recognizable name and a verb that made blood run cold. The facts, however, told a completely different story. There is zero verified evidence that Trevor Heard was killed after leaving federal custody. Not from law enforcement, not from family, not from the associates who were literally filming his release hours before the rumor machine started spinning. What actually happened? The immediate rearrest by LA County on state probation charges created an information vacuum, a sudden silence where celebration footage had been, and the internet filled that void with its worst, most paranoid, most catastrophically addictive instincts. When Heard disappeared from public view after release, when the homecoming post stopped and silence stretched from hours to days, people did what the hip-hop community has been conditioned to do by years of real loss. They assumed the worst. Smoked could mean kill. It could mean roasted, humiliated, cooked online. It could even mean high. The linguistic ambiguity was the accelerant, and social media was the match. By the time the truth about the probation hold came out, the death rumor had already metastasized into a full-blown urban legend. This isn't isolated to Crip. It's a structural feature of how the internet treats black rappers with gang affiliations. Viral death hoaxes have haunted the rap world for years. Every time a rapper goes quiet, whether in jail, rehab, a mental health break, or just not posting for 48 hours, the rumor mill fires up with the mechanical predictability of an assembly line. The real murder of Drakeo, the ruler at Once Upon a Time in LA in 2021, supercharged that paranoia, creating a template where any silence from a known gang-affiliated artist triggers the same reaction. Fearful calculus. No posts equals something happened equals he is gone. Someone sees a post about Crip being taken into custody. Someone else interprets taken as taken out. A third person screenshots it, adds a fire emoji, RIP, and gone and too soon. Suddenly, it's treated as fact. One obscure thread even floated a suicide narrative post-release, which seems to be crossed wires with well-documented discussions about Heard's mental health, the schizophrenia diagnosis mentioned in his Channel 5 GoFundMe, the bipolar disorder associates described, and other untreated conditions that add clinical volatility to an already unstable existence. The confusion was worsened by the unfortunate overlap of names and simultaneous cases. Matt Critter, a completely different person with a phonetically similar name, was facing murder charges at the exact same time. Casual fans conflated the two. Media outlets covering gang culture with the blunt precision of a sledgehammer didn't bother to differentiate. The result was an informational slurry painting Heard as dead, dying, disappeared, or in mortal danger. In reality, he was sitting in an LA County holding facility, probably watching his own death rumor trend from behind plexiglass. February 2nd, 2026 brought the next act, court. The judge had the authority to revoke Heard's probation entirely, which could have sent him back for the full remaining term, stacked additional time, buried him in the system for months or years. That worst-case scenario didn't happen. After arguments from prosecution and defense, the hold was sustained briefly. Then, on February 21st, 2026, Heard finally walked out for real. No false start, no bait, and switch. Actual, documented freedom. Video capturing the emotional release as he stepped into open air overwhelmed the kind of raw footage that turns a man into a symbol, whether he consented or not. Welcome home reels flooded Instagram and TikTok. The narrative flipped from tragedy to triumph in a single news cycle, which is exactly how the internet processes black men from the streets, either eulogizing them or deifying them, with zero emotional bandwidth left for the boring, human, complicated middle ground, where a man just wants to eat a plate of Popeyes without someone writing a headline about it.
I had to go to the judge and tell him what was going on. Like, hey, because they were trying to violate me for living in the hood.
That clip strips the legal apparatus down to its bare truth. And it's the same truth that shaped every second of Heard's post-release life. Gang injunctions, court-ordered rules dictating where documented gang members can live, who they can be seen with, what hours they can be outside, what streets they can walk on, act as invisible electric fences, keeping people like Heard perpetually incarcerated even when they're technically free on paper. You're on probation. You're a documented member of the 55th Street neighborhood Crips. You live in the neighborhood that carries your set's name. Simply existing in your own zip code can be a violation. Being present in the community you grew up in is probable cause. Your life, as you've always lived it, becomes a crime. Legal challenges have been filed against these injunctions, arguing they are fundamentally unconstitutional, and some have even succeeded. But the system adapts, rebrands the same restrictions under new bureaucratic labels, and keeps the machinery of containment running under fresh paint.
It has, because people have filed lawsuits on it already.
The media dynamics around Heard's story added another combustible layer to the situation. Accusations emerged that No Jumper's Adam, 22, had systematically exploited Heard's arrest, release, rear cycle for content, mining the most painful moments of a black man's life for views, engagement, metrics, and ad revenue. Others extended the critique to the wider media ecosystem, arguing that white content creators documenting gang culture, including Andrew Callahan, despite his genuinely demonstrated advocacy through the GoFundMe Legal Defense Fund, were part of a long-established pattern of calm-modifying black pain for mostly non-black audiences. Whether those critiques are fully accurate or not, they expose a real, measurable, and unresolved tension. The Crimax story generates tens of millions of impressions across platforms, and the vast majority of the infrastructure profiting from those impressions, the platforms, the channels, the media companies, the advertisers, does not look like the man whose suffering fuels the content. The General's next chapter. So where do Trevor Heard, Crip Mac, the 55th Street General, the man the internet spent 3 full weeks oscillating between mourning and celebrating, actually stand right now? As of February 22nd, 2026, the day after his verified, confirmed, no takebacks release from LA County custody, the answer is free. Not metaphorically free, not conditionally free, where someone is out on bail or in some transitional spot that only counts as freedom on paper. Free, walking, breathing unregulated air, making his own choices about what to eat and when to rest for the first time in years. His Instagram at 55th Street is live and active, flooded with post-release content, homecoming footage, live stream, the early rumblings of new heat in the stash, interviews already circulating on No Jumper and affiliated channels. The tone across it all is that familiar cocktail of gratitude and defiance that every soul who's ever done a bid and touched back down recognizes on a molecular level, thankful to be standing outside, heated about the years the system snatched, locked in on, reclaiming what was lost, fully aware that the machine isn't done with you just because it cracked the door open. But the shadows are patient, and they haven't retreated. Hurd's affiliation with the 55th Street neighborhood Crips is not a chapter he closed in prison. It's the tattoo on his face. It's the name in his Instagram handle. It's the identity that built his fame, generated his audience, grew his brand, and simultaneously, it's the identity that keeps law enforcement surveillance locked on him with the persistence of a tracking algorithm. The beefs with Hoovers, with Bloods, with rival Crip factions who see his internet celebrity as a violation of street protocol, didn't disappear while he was in federal custody. They fermented. The DP incidents from before incarceration, disciplinary actions imposed by his own gang for perceived internal violations, including beatdowns that went viral and exposed fractures within the 55th Street set, remain indexed on the internet forever, searchable by anyone with a grudge and a phone. His OPG Goblin persona, the confrontational character that fueled deadly rivalries and generated millions of views, is a double-edged sword defining his entire existence, his greatest commercial asset and his most dangerous personal liability, inseparable from each other.
It ain't never coming off. You remove tattoos, you might as well put a dress on.
That line is the whole thesis, compressed into a single sentence. The tattoos stay. The affiliation stays. The identity is not negotiable, not erasable, not something you shed like a costume when the cameras stop rolling or the probation officer starts questioning. In a system that explicitly demands disassociation as a precondition for continued freedom. Stop claiming your set. Stop posting gang content. Stop associating with known members. Stop being who you fundamentally are. Hurd's refusal to erase himself is both an act of cultural defiance and a self-imposed obstacle to the clean, compliant, repentant narrative the court wants to see. Every probation officer who reviews his social media sees a man who hasn't been rehabilitated by their institutional metrics. Every judge who pulls up his Instagram sees recidivism loading. And every fan watching that same content sees something the system cannot quantify: authenticity, the rarest and most bankable commodity in the attention economy. That authenticity is exactly why the channel grew, why streams generate revenue, why merchandise moves, and why his estimated net worth still sits somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. Mailer range despite prison draining a significant portion. The prison experience itself became potent content at that. Phone calls from federal custody discussing fights with rival factions. Adapting to the rhythms of institutional life with braids and forced positivity, navigating the internal politics of incarceration, where alliances with groups like the Mexican Mafia could mean the difference between safety and a trip to the infirmary. Hot New Hip Hop documented his sentencing in extensive detail, and the comment sections under that coverage became a referendum on the central question no one can resolve. Is Trevor Hurd a victim of systemic targeting? A black man from South Central whose zip code predetermined his path through the criminal justice system? Or is he a man facing the consequences of choices he made, fully aware of the risks? The honest answer is that both can be true at once. Systemic oppression and personal responsibility are not mutually exclusive, and the internet absolutely does not have the emotional or intellectual bandwidth to hold both ideas at the same time.
But I'm like, where Cud? Cud next door already wrapping his hands up and ready.
Prison fights. Beef settled with wrapped fists behind concrete walls. Someone next door is already preparing for violence before the confrontation is even spoken. That's the world Hurd navigated for years. And it's the world whose reflexes and instincts he carries back onto the streets of South Central. The question that matters now, the only question, is whether survival mode, the setting that kept him alive inside, can coexist with the freedom mode his fans want to see, his family needs to see, and his future demands. Can the man who described settling institutional scores with violence pivot to studio sessions, brand partnerships, and active fatherhood without the gravitational pull of the streets yanking him backward? Can the legal system, with probation officers, mandatory check-ins, gang injunctions, and social media surveillance, give him any real space to become something other than what his criminal record says he is? The immediate future is loaded with both promise and peril in roughly equal measure. Post-release interviews are already circulating, generating engagement numbers that make platform algorithms salivate. New music is in the pipeline. Hurd has teased tracks and collaborations that could capitalize on the massive global attention his arrest, release, Rira saga generated. Documentary interest hasn't cooled. Andrew Callahan's Channel 5 coverage laid the groundwork for a potential feature-length treatment that could conceivably land at major festivals. The flip side of that coin is just as real and just as sharp. Diss tracks from active rivals like Milk 74 continue to circulate, keeping beefs alive that Hurd may not have the luxury to ignore. Probation conditions mean that any misstep, a failed drug test, an association deemed inappropriate, a social media post interpreted as gang activity, sends him straight back to custody, without the elaborate legal proceedings a new arrest would require. And the mental health challenges that predated his fame, the schizophrenia, the bipolar episodes described by associates, don't take vacations just because cameras are rolling and streams are climbing. What makes Crip Mac's story resonate beyond the spectacle of gang culture and viral content is the universality beneath the set claiming, face tattoos, and ghost gun charges. At its core, this is the story of a human being who wanted belonging and found it in the only institution that would accept him without conditions. A man who wanted respect and earned it through violence because violence was the only currency his environment recognized and rewarded. A man who wanted fame and achieved it through radical transparency, only to discover that the same visibility that generates income also brings law enforcement scrutiny, rival attention, media exploitation, and an audience that consumes his pain as entertainment while debating whether he deserves empathy or accountability. He fed homeless people in his neighborhood between bids. He wept for his grandmother during court appearances live-streamed to millions. He cracks jokes about Popeye's chicken while carrying psychiatric diagnoses that would challenge anyone's stability in a comfortable suburban home, let alone in a federal cell or on streets where his face functions simultaneously as a billboard, a brand, and a target. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your